Hey guys, Zach here with Minimal Escapes, and today I'm going to be going over what I believe to be the 5 best beginner stems. This isn't going to include epiphytes. This also isn't going to include really any foreground carpeting plants, and it's not going to include any mosses. So just get that out of the way, but without further ado, let's get right into the list. Up first is going to be Sagittarii subulata, which is better known in the hobby as Dwarf Sag. Now, this plant is narrow-leafed green, and it can be sort of compact. I really like it. The interesting thing about this plant, though, is depending on light levels within your tank, the length of the leaves will differ. So if you've got really high light, it's going to stay much shorter, but if you've got low light, it's going to start growing up much closer to the surface and try and get higher. Another great thing about this is that I would consider this sort of a low budget carpeting plant, because things like hairgrass and Liliopsis brasiliensis, they can really get tricky to carpet when you're first starting out, and usually it looks better even when you have CO2 or it takes too long without CO2, but Dwarf Sag will carpet sort of in a timely manner, and it really does look good. I also like this plant because the runners it sends out are very easy to find, they're very easy to trim, and you can just replant those wherever, making it sort of easy to manage. Coming in at second is going to be Limnophila sessiflora. This is a big, puffy, feathery plant that doesn't require a lot of light to really look good. Now, just like all other stems, as soon as it grows a little bit, you can cut off the top and replant the base, and it'll start growing again. So as far as propagation goes, it's super easy, super simple, and it's very easy to manage, I've found. For growth rate too, it's manageable. It's not too fast, but it's not too slow. It's enough that you're going to see progress as it goes without really stagnating. Another great thing about this plant is that it can sort of tell you the condition of the water based off of how far apart the nodes where the leaves stem from are separated. Right? The further apart they are, the lower your CO2 in the water is, and I would say the lower your light is. And that, to me, indicates, when I use this plant, that I can up the amount of light that I'm giving a tank, and I shouldn't really see algae. So if I start to see that in some of my Limnophila, I see that the nodes are slowly getting further and further apart, I'll up the light maybe from 6 hours a day to 8 hours a day, and it really helps me keep the tank in check without growing algae. Now, in third place is one of my personal favorite plants, and that's going to be Vallisneria. This plant is long and thin, and it really just adds this kind of jungle feel to any tank that it goes in. Val really is one of the best plants out there that money can buy. Just to start off, it's relatively cheap in most stores, so you're not going to blow the bank, and you really only need to buy one pot of it just for the speed that it propagates at. You don't need two. You're going to be just fine with one. In a couple of months, it'll be like you've got 25 pots. But you don't have to really be too worried about that, because the way that Val propagates is by sending out runners. So even though it propagates fast, it's really easy to manage, and it's not gonna suddenly overtake the tank. Another great thing about it is its undemanding nature. You just need a good nutrient layer and a low amount of light, and Val's gonna do just fine. I'm sure if you just put nutrients on the bottom, put it in a tank, and put it in the window, it would do phenomenally. Another great thing about Val is that even though it'll grow up to the surface, it'll start to loom over. And I really find this look quite nice, and it adds a wildness to the tank. Coming in at fourth is going to be Rotella Rotundifolia, which is a relatively undemanding plant from the Rotella species. I've really put it on this list for two specific reasons. The first is going to be that in your tank it might be green, but as your tank matures and you might up your lighting, it'll go red. which makes it a very easy to care for, low maintenance red plant that's great for any beginner. In some of my tanks, I even have it green, and in others, I have it red, which is really cool to see, and it doesn't take long for it to transition. If I take a stem from one of my tanks that's red and put it into a tank with other green stems, it'll turn back to green and it'll continue growing, which is fantastic. Now, the next reason I put it on here is when you go to the store and you get Rotella Rotundifolia, depending on how they keep it, you might see something a little different, and that's going to be its leaf shape. When it's grown immersed, which means the plant is out of the water but the roots are in water, it's going to get round leaves on it. But when you submerge it and it goes underwater, any of the new growth is going to have skinnier, arrow-like leaves. So just be careful, because if you look it up online, it might not look how you think it does in the store, but it's a pretty neat thing that can happen when Rotella starts to grow immersed in your own tank. It starts to become, it's like two different plants really. Finishing off this list is going to be Pantera Zosterfolia. This is better known as stargrass. This is a big kind of spiky looking plant that grows great in sort of mid-light level tanks. And it really does propagate quite fast, and I do have to warn you guys about it. I got mine in a small tissue culture cup, and now it's in every single one of my tanks just for how fast it grows, and it's not a bad thing. It's just that you have to be ready for that in order to keep on top of maintenance if you don't want it to just take over. Another cool thing about it is that it does flower if given the chance, so it'll start to kind of loom over like jungle val, and if you get enough of that and sort of a, I would call it floating carpet, it'll break the surface and little blue flowers will come out the top, which is very neat. But if this is kept more compact and you stay right on top of trimming, it's going to grow much bushier, and it really adds a lot to an aquarium. So guys, that is everything for this video. Hopefully anyone out there that's watching and is looking to set up a tank uses the information in this video to consider these plants and maybe try them out. And anyone out there that's already got some tanks set up but doesn't have one of these, maybe you want to give them a shot just to see. But if you guys did enjoy, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.